Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Playing around with all these things, trying to make cool video intros. It's a lot to do. I need some extra hands here. So hey, this is an awesome episode, right? I mean, we have the CEO of Siga North America, Etienne Gubler, on the screen with us. And of course, we have Miles Biggs Ideas is always with us. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Etienne, why don't you give us a little bit of background on, how you became the CEO of North America for Siga? I'd love to hear the story, because this is a branding story that I think everybody's going to love to hear.
Yeah, most certainly. So my journey started with Siga 7 years ago, and I was part of the management trainee program, which is a program that Siga has put in place to give talents or graduates from universities an opportunity to join the organization early on and kind of learn the business from going out there selling products. So kind of, I don't want to use that term, but start from the bottom to a certain degree and really get to understand the core business. I was part of that group.
Right.
I was sent to Germany for my first year. That was a huge challenge. I remember when I signed my contract, they said, "Listen, Etienne, you have to sign today, but we cannot tell you in what country you're going to work. You will find out a few months down the line." I'm like, all right, sure, let's do it. It was Germany for me. After a year, I went back to Siga, the headquarters in Switzerland. I worked there in a role as project manager sales, and was also involved with the newly founded business development department. And after 2 years of doing that, I was finally able to move to North America. The main reason for me working, or my desire to work in North America, was my heart. My heart for the country on the one hand, but mainly back then it was the heart for my wife, or now wife. She's American. And so I was always interested in going to North America. And so, yeah, for me, then my first assignment in North America was head of sales. So I was responsible for our sales teams, back then mainly in the US, on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And then 2 years ago, a little bit more now, I got appointed as CEO, and we really restructured the way we do business over here. We added marketing departments. We just had all the departments and disciplines under one umbrella, so that we could be active and respond fast in the market without the need of having to coordinate with different kind of bosses in Switzerland who were responsible for certain departments. So it was a kind of a streamlining of activities. Yeah, and so here I am. Now I'm the CEO of Siga North America. It's an amazing job that you can grow in every day. And yeah, so that's kind of my story.
Love it. I love it. Well, listen, we're so excited to have you here. Miles, kick us off, man.
Well, I'm really curious, with your global background, what's different about operating the business here in the United States versus over in Germany, where you started, for example?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. And I think I have to give you a little bit the background. So Siga has been in business, as you might saw in the video, since 1966. So in Europe, which is our home market, we are very, very well established. All right. Here in North America, the journey started in 2011. So for us, it was here. I always said we are like a startup with a very good backup. So, and also if you look at the energy codes in Europe and the way we build is more energy focused, it's more energy efficient. I think that's fair to say. And therefore, here in North America, you have many more challenges. Obviously, we are a no-name. No one knows Siga. We are very small, compared to the big boys. And so the business runs completely different. We really have to focus much more on, first of all, making sure we get known, people know who we are, what system we do. And then from a building science point of view, there are a lot more different ways of more or less achieving the same result here in North America than in Europe. Europe has more of a uniform standard how you address air sealing, and in the US that's different. So we have just much more competition, system competition, product competition. It's the land of marketing, so obviously something that we weren't forced to do so much in Europe. You're known after 50 years, so there are a lot more challenges that we have. So I think it's more exciting because we have more room to be creative and define that, whereas in Europe it's defined.
Yeah, for sure. So, if you're just joining us now, because I see a lot of new people have just joined in, we are on with Etienne Gubler, CEO of Siga North America. You can read that right on the screen, of course. And this is increasing influence. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is, social marketing, personal branding, corporate branding, using influencers, not using influencers, so we're gonna cover a lot of ground, and I think it's really a relevant topic, especially with what's going on right now. So I'd love to dive into that with you and start talking a little bit about what is Siga doing to keep relevant out there with everybody.
So for us, given that we are kind of a smaller company over here, and we just don't have the marketing budget to compete with this very, very large corporation. I mean, look, I can't outspend DuPont or Dow Chemicals or whoever. I mean, I just don't have the funds to do that. So for us, out of the necessity to come up with other ways to be heard, we turned to more of an influencer marketing-based strategy. Because it allowed us to reach very targeted groups with a much smaller budget than the traditional channels. I'll give you an example. If you go to a trade show and you want to have an impact, you just don't want to be there, but you want to be seen, you're going to spend easily $50,000, $100,000, depending on the show. Well, that's a yearly salary for someone who would just promote you, so you really have to think, where does the money go? And the construction industry is historically a little bit slow in adapting to new environments or new technologies sometimes. And I don't mean that in any offense. It's just, we see how, for example, in how our construction has not really transformed yet to offsite manufacturing and so on and so forth. And so that being said, for us, when I came in, a lot of things were very traditional with the way people reach out. So for us, that we saw this as an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Miles?
Yeah, well, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, people watching this might be thinking, that makes sense, better spend $1, but how? I think would be the next question in their minds. Where do you find these influencers that you're going to pay that salary versus the big booth? Do you do it one-on-one? Is there a service that you use? What do you guys do to sort through all the noise that's out there on the internet and find the right people?
Yeah. So we would sort them one-on-one. We do this ourselves. We don't outsource selecting partners. And I think, what's really important is often you are selected by the partner. And I think that's the ultimate goal when it comes to working with influencers. I think first you need to win their heart. They are obviously subject matter experts in, let's say, a carpenter, well-known carpenter, has been in the profession for 30 years. His opinion matters to other carpenters, and his opinion matters to me. And I would like to know, if I send him a sample, for example, what do you think? Truthfully, I mean, you don't put out the video and tell people that it's the greatest if you don't believe it. Test it, put out a video and tell the world what you really think. And I think for me, when it comes to working with influencers, that has always been the goal, to give them their room to really say whatever they want to say and what they feel, because that's why the audience loves them. And that's why I think if you get their real endorsement, this is going to be a long-term project. Which brings me to the next point. Working with influencers is not a one-off. Yes, you can do a test, so to say, as a one-off test, but you really have to commit to this. And it's about the relationship that you build with a network. And it's very important. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. If you pick your influencer, he also picks you. So both images matter, right? If he promotes you, he needs to be sure that whatever he just told his people, it's a good product. It's a company that's going to back up what they promised him and what they're going to promise to the world. So for us, the selection process is we like to identify influencers. For us, it's Instagram. It's the main channel. Instagram, LinkedIn, increasingly, it's growing now. But definitely Instagram is where things are happening in the construction world. YouTube as well. Sorry, I shouldn't forget YouTube. That's definitely a big one too. So Instagram and YouTube are the channels. And we pick them by looking at what's their audience, what's their content to start with. You read through the posts, you see kind of like, is there a lot of meat on that post, or is it just a nice picture? What's the messaging? Are they educational? So there are a lot of criteria to go into this. But once you determine, okay, we kind of like the message here, this is an expert. The number of followers is not so important. You don't need to have 1 million, and there are actually not a lot that have so many. But it's really about, as I would say, 10,000 followers is a really good number. That makes you super interesting, and then having good content. And you start just to talk, and ideally, or in my case, most of the people I'm interested could be my customers. So if I win them over as customers, that's kind of like the ultimate goal.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what I'm hearing, it's quantity is good in the construction space, but it's also the quality of who their customer is. Is that accurate? Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, your company has worked with influencers in the past, right? And you were saying earlier, we're just a tape company. Well, you're more than just a tape company, right? You're an house envelope. Kind of explain what you meant by that, and because it was successful for you.
Yes, I mean, so first of all, I think that's something we've really learned. I mean, we are a manufacturer, and there is always a risk in your mind that you see yourself as just that, right? And I think that's important, and I think, Mais, you can really talk to that as well, right? You really have to understand who you are. And for us, everything starts with our vision. So Siga, we strive for a world of zero energy loss buildings. So that's a huge topic. And how do we get there? Well, by building airtight homes. And so if you ask me again, like, Etienne, how do you really see yourself? Well, we are an airtightness experts. And our goal is to help people get there, reach their airtightness goals, which will reduce the overall energy consumption of a home. So the reason why I said the tape thing, that was more kind of more of a provocative self-assessment, in a sense where, even something you don't see that sounds like, this is not, it doesn't really matter. How do you promote that? And I want to really make sure that everyone understands, regardless of in what industry you're in, even if it's a super niche, you can still work with influencers, because that's what you do. Influencers are representing a niche, and just go find them. So, Mais, maybe could you address what I just said in terms of like defining, what your company is, talking about that?
Yeah, sure. And I think you're both, right? You're a tape company, and then you're talking about building envelope. And I think it's two different ways to look at it. You can be product focused and lean into that. You have a physical thing that you can sell. And then there's this movement that you're a part of, which is moving towards the zero energy house and the improvements that can have on the environment. And depending on the audience that you're talking to, you pick which messaging makes the most sense. If you're doing a product ad or someone's typing into Google and there's the shopping experience for e-commerce, yeah, you're the tape company. It's going to be product focused. But when you're building an engaging video where you have an influencer telling the story, you're telling the story about what that tape allows you to do and what it's a part of with the bigger picture and why your company exists and the impact that you're making. So there's a difference there. It's the storytelling, and then it's the just straight up going after conversions and sales.
Right. And you were also mentioning your customers are your best influencers.
Yeah,
that's what you were alluding to, right?
Yeah, and I think that's also something that's important. Track the people who are posting and talking about you and who are engaging with you. These are your brand champions. And I think it makes a lot of sense to build a relationship with brand champions. That is a very natural way. And, sometimes that means you repost whatever they post, that's cool, that both win. You win because they create the content for you, and they win because they get more visibility. And I mean, frankly, it's just cool if you have an engagement with a brand on a personal level as well. So I think that's important. Sometimes it's also, you can of course trigger that. When we started initially with Instagram, we tried to do this by sending a few samples out and just see what happens. Right. I found that as a strategy that works to a certain degree. I mean, you can direct message someone and be like, hey, can I send you some samples? And, 95% of people say, yeah, sure, include some freebies or whatever. And they either post it or not. But I guess it depends on the product you're selling. And you go from there. But I think in all the conversation, we never started with the money. That was not part of it. It was really more about, understanding how we can help each other.
Right, for sure. I think the whole concept is new to a lot of people that are out there. And when I say new in our industry, there are some pretty big social media influencers and what have you. But how relevant is it in today's day and age with everybody sitting at home? Do you increase your social media outreach, whether it's influencers, whether it's posting on social media? Like, what do you think is the most important thing to do? Because the trade shows aren't happening. So, outside of virtual events, what should people be looking at?
I mean, maybe I can start, and Miles, please weigh in on that as well. I personally think that you should not increase what you're doing, because right now we are in a time where you have information overflow. I just find right now there's so much happening and going on, and I don't know maybe there's the argument if it's noisy, shout louder. I'm not 100% sure. I think stay consistent with your messaging. Focus more on what you have to say rather than the quantity. So, as always, quality over quantity. For us, at least, we have not increased the amount of what we put out there. So I don't know, Miles, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the industry and what you're selling. We have some clients at Mojo Active where we are increasing their spend, and their conversions are increasing with that spend because certain people are looking to buy certain things. As quarantine stretches on, some people are starting to get that itch to buy something right now because they haven't been able to go out and go shopping for a while. And so they're turning to online experiences. A lot of people are getting those stimulus checks and want to spend them because it's free money to them. And if they haven't been affected, haven't lost their job, it's a disposable income, right? But something like housing, where not everybody was deemed essential and some projects are on hold and are uncertain in the future, maybe contracts that were close to being signed didn't get signed, then I can see exactly what you're saying, where you don't need to go all in and spend that money right now. You can save that cash for when things reopen and then maybe hit it stronger to make up for lost time.
Yeah, for sure. And, from my end, being an offsite construction, what we're seeing is a lot of people starting to switch their dollar volumes to get into the niche market, where suppliers are wanting to get a foothold into offsite construction. And they are trying to find different ways of doing that. I'm seeing it all over the place with everybody that we're speaking with. And I have to tell you, it's interesting. I think the big TV dollar spends are slowing down. And I think social media marketing and I don't know what you want to call it as far as AdSense marketing on computers is picking up. And I think it's going to become more and more prevalent moving forward. And Etienne, you hit it the nail right in the head. And, I know it's a cliche to say that, but there's a lot of noise out there. And Miles and I always agree to this. The number one asset in the world today is people's attention. Right? That's Gary Vaynerchuk says that all the time. What's the number one asset in the world? And it's getting people's attention, because everybody's trying to reach in everybody's pocket. Everybody's putting all this noise out there. So how do you cut through that noise? If you're not going to spend more, all right, okay. Well, what do you do to the people that decide to spend a whole lot, and really flood the market? I think it's such a fine line to understand how it all comes together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, for me, the answer is great content. That's always. I mean, it always comes down to the better your content is, the better it does. The more people like it, the better engagement you get. Just as always, make sure you give them something that has real value. And maybe due to the changed circumstances due to COVID-19, you might have more time to develop content. You have freed up resources that can go into that, or you just spend the time on developing a longer strategy.
Right. Miles, with what you're doing with the podcast, Mojo Active, and everything else, give us some examples of how you guys are becoming more creative in how you're spending.
Sure. Well, again, it's the caveat that it's different for every industry, right? What we're going to do for a high-end luxury fashion brand is different than what we would do with a company like Siga. And with Siga, for example, I think one thing to think about too in the future is people, when you talk about when you have their attention, right, what's going to be most impactful for them. And I think framing it in people's health, I think we're going to see that. So why should you have a tighter envelope on your residential structure, your commercial structure? Well, germs are airborne, right? If you have a better quality control over the air coming in and out of your building, you're going to be healthier in general. And that will resonate with people very much after this clears and people start building again. They might have poo-pooed it and said, I don't need to spend extra money on that, but I don't think we'll see that dismissive attitude anymore. So it really just depends, right? I think what you said, Etienne, is so true. Content, as long as it's really good content. So I think a focus right now on the content you have and making sure that it's in line with the times. I know we generate content calendars years in advance. We already know what we're going to do for certain companies in Q4, or we did. And then when all this happened, we had to revisit it and say, does that make sense anymore? Is that right to talk about right now? You don't want to just be pushing content out there for the sake of pushing content. You want to make sure that, again, to use a phrase you said, Etienne, value, right? And you even said you don't talk about money first with an influencer. It's all about the value you can provide one another. And when you're talking to, whether it's a B2B or B2C relationship, they're exchanging their attention or they're exchanging their money to your company for that value. And what is it? It's either educational or it's, they're actually getting the product. And so making sure that we're educating them in the best way possible so that when they do come to buy, that they're more likely to go to your company rather than the other guy.
Yeah, very much so. So let's do a couple quick shout outs here. We have some people that are saying hi to you, Etienne. I don't know if you have it on your screen, but Paul Toussaint, did I say that right? Paul Toussaint, Toussa. I apologize if I am not saying that right. Thank you for joining. He says hello, Etienne. So we have Sean.
I call them. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, and then we have Sean McStay has a question for us. He's the National Sales Manager, Canada. I can't read the whole thing on what it is, but we'll look afterwards. How do you deal with influencers who represent multiple products, which might include competitive products?
Well, I mean, I think these are, so for me, that's a good question. How you deal with them. I mean, I say that's the perfect influencer for you right there, because first of all, he will have a diverse audience, right? So it gives, of course, it gives you an opportunity to be seen maybe also by people who are using a different product or who are following him because of your competitor. And I think, at the end of the day, winning the race, the influencer is there to get your word out. And once again, if you convince him and he likes you, that can have a huge impact, right? But big picture for me, this is not something that turns me off if I see he promotes the competition. I would look at, in my opinion, is it a fair representation? Is it factual? Is it fair? Are the tests and comparison that he makes with my product or other products, can I stand behind them? Or is it kind of, this would be some of my criteria. But while it hurts sometimes to see someone that we work with promoting a lot of other companies, I mean, that's just how it is. And this is how the market is. At the end of the day, the influencers are there to help people make decisions in a very, very crowded marketplace. And that's why we like to listen to them, to see kind of how do they navigate 20 different products for the same problem, right? What about you, Miles?
Well, I was going to ask you a question, actually, is if that ever backfired for you, You know, if there was a time where there's sort of an influencer fail, right, that you learn from, that other people watching could learn from when they're looking to vet out certain people before putting product in their hands and hoping for a good reaction?
I think the biggest fail that we had was so far more that they just didn't use it or post about it. I think for us so far that has been the biggest one. As I said, there was a period where we did send out samples or we tried to kind of get that reaction. You just get nothing, you know, and that kind of showed me, all right, either I didn't phrase it right or he didn't like it or he was just busy. That so far has been a fail. Luckily, I've not had moments, you know, where we were live on camera where people were like, well, you know, this is totally terrible. Don't buy from that company. There were tests made, not tests that we initiated, but just, you know, people out there who are testing products or setting up their own testing, and you don't always win them, right? And that's always kind of a tricky challenge because, you know, if you win, you don't care how you got there, right? But if you don't win, you of course can be like, well, I don't like that test, or this is wrong with it. And so this is something that you kind of have to navigate. But I think it's important that you can control it. And you have to be okay with that if you're out in the space. And once again, it's an influencer is someone's opinion. It's not everyone's opinion. And right. I guess you have to live with that. So no, I don't have like a crazy story where we completely failed. Just not getting on the radar. That's the biggest failure.
Right. Well, that's because you're good at what you do. Right? All right, let's so Alexandra, see, I gotta get better at my French. I think this is French. Alexandra Degangs, Gagne.
Degagne.
Yep. Hello, Etienne from Quebec. Anthony Good has joined us. Hi, Anthony. Always good to see you. And of course, Jennifer's on here. And then look at this. We have John Magnan's on. Hey, John, what's happening? Robert Beeks. Hey, Robert, how are you? So yeah, we got quite a few people tuning in. Listen, if you're watching and you want to ask a question, now is the time to do it. We have Etienne Gubler from Siga North America, the CEO. I just love saying that because you're so young, right? You're so young. So let's hop back to this because I know I jumped in the beginning. My mind gets going. And you told us a little bit about how you became, you know, the CEO of North America, but how do people perceive you as a young CEO? Do you find you sit in the same chairs as the old Pale Male and Stales and the older people that have been around forever?
Well, I mean, that's a really good topic. You know, for me, it has always been something that I said, judge me by my actions, not by my title. And what I meant or want to express with that is kind of like, yeah, I know it sounds pretty fancy. This is just the official title that comes with it. But when people think about the CEO, they think about, you know, Fortune 500, 5,000 employee situation. And that's not what I am. I mean, I think, you know, my work represents more what a typical entrepreneur would do. In a sense, we have a small team, you have certain budget restrictions, and we just have a playing field and we try to move forward. What I love about the role is that I'm able to work in so many disciplines. And then I think another aspect to, you know, people are often a little bit confused when it comes to my age and they feel like, oh, you're so young and this is like the top. And I say, for me, it's really about what Richard Branson said, you know, if you get offered an opportunity, you don't know how to do it, go take that job and figure it out. And it really, you grow with your job. I don't know if any one of you is a fisherman or knows about fish, but a fish can grow according to the pond he is in. Okay, so that's really important. My friends, they have koi fish, right? You buy them, they're pretty small. Dude, they have these ginormous fish because they built the ginormous pond in their backyard. And for me, that's really about, you have to make sure you put yourself in big ponds, right? So you can grow as an individual. And we are all humans, you know, CEO or not. And I think the nice thing with CEO is it comes to a certain degree with kind of some credit due to the title, but it also comes with a responsibility because people have certain expectation what, you know, a CEO maybe has more thought out answers, or has more of a holistic view, or has this strategy to things, and and I don't know. I'm just me, and but I don't know. I mean, you both are entrepreneurs and have been in leading roles and are in leading roles. How is it for you? I mean, let's take the spotlight away and look at you.
Go ahead, Miles. Because Miles, listen, I don't know if a lot of people watching know, but you were the manager of a large modular home manufacturer, and I mean, you were the top dog there for quite a while. Let's put the spotlight on you, Miles.
Bring it on, right? I'm happy to answer. I really love what you said, Etienne, by the way, about judging you by your actions and not your title, right? And the fish analogy is a great one as well. And I think that's what it comes down to, is people might respect the title because they have to, but they'll respect the person because they want to. You know what I mean? And that's going to come out of the actions, like you said. And that's what's most important, is even when you reach the top, you still have to have that underdog mindset, because you have to prove that you're worthy of that seat you're sitting in, or that title that's after your name. Because you almost have more reasons to fail than you do to succeed at that point, right? People want you to fall from grace sometimes. So it's important to have a good mindset, really focusing on others and value, and how can you make it about the team and not about you, and really give all the credits away for the wins, but then take all the blame. And that's going to build that respect, and you'll earn the authority that you've stepped into, right? That maybe prematurely, like you said, you have to grow with it. And it just comes by being an authentic human and not just the title.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the whole adage, being a servant leader.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're really, you may have that title, but it's really about serving those who work with you. And I never say for. To me, it's, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. I don't care who you are. And, for me, I'll tell you right off the bat, don't send me a long email. I'm going to pick up the phone and call you, because I can't stand writing emails, and I can't stand writing letters. And I even more can't stand reading full page letters, but I'm pretty good at running my mouth. So, so I think being a servant leader is the right way to go, because and just like you said, Etienne, it's about, what comes out of my mouth, what's my actions, that speaks louder than any title will ever speak. And that is so true, because listen, if you don't have the respect of those that are relying to get that paycheck every week, on you or from you, it doesn't matter who you are. It's not going to work. And people need to know that you're in the trenches with them, and you're here for the long haul, and people want job security. And Etienne, we talked about that, several times over the last few months about, hey, listen, my biggest concern is, keeping everything going the best we can. So yeah, I love it. Servant leader. Miles, what do you got for me? Oh, you know what? John Magnan, he said, bonjour from Boise. All right, John, funny guy. In fact, I missed a text from John. I was on some live feed last night about offsite construction with a group in Canada, and John was on, but I was done after all day yesterday. I was like, I got to tune out. So, all right, anybody out there that has a question, now is your time. Jennifer wrote, let's see what Jennifer wrote. Great advice. Keep your messaging consistent and clear right now. And that's very true. So thank you for that, Jennifer. I think we got everybody else. You guys got anything else you want to talk about? Come on.
John just submitted a question.
No, did he? Let's see. No. It's not popping up on my screen yet. Maybe I need a better computer.
So his question, Etienne, is, how do you sell a premium product that gets covered up? What is your market sector?
Oh, that's good. John, always the cowboy.
Yeah. So, well, John, thank you very much for your question. I mean, that's a very good question for a ton of products when it comes to construction or everything. I mean, think about my phone. I mean, what do I see? I see my screen and the back, and I don't even know what's inside, right? So it's a lot. And you sell it by focusing on the function and really highlight this. I think for us, that's why I said I don't see ourselves as a tape manufacturer, because that's a product centric. I really say I want to focus on the result that you get once you purchase or use our products. And that's an energy efficient home. So we really focus on that. Generally speaking, how do you sell a premium price product? Well, I mean, the most important thing is price is relative to value, right? And you have to focus on creating that value. And when you pitch, in my opinion, if you have the highest price, well, don't start with that, because you're going to lose that. You're going to look bad. I mean, it's kind of like what you have 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour with one person. You want to talk about the things where you stand out. So you have to understand why are people buying you. And that brings me actually to a really good topic that I want to ask here too. For me, what I realized the more and more is do not assume. Okay, assumptions are the biggest kind of threat to a business, because if we assume why someone buys us versus asking why and trying to listen to them why and then targeting that why, that can be a differentiator if you make it or break it. And for me, that's something I wanted to learn from the two of you as well. What are kind of assumptions that you typically or repeatedly find are false, and how do you address that topic?
Yeah. Go ahead, Miles.
Well, I think people get hung up on what you just said about price versus value, and so they can't see past the short term like investment, and they're not thinking about the long term payoff. Especially with our houses, right? We have 30-year mortgages. Think about what the investment now in a tighter building envelope is going to mean for your lifetime of energy bills in that house, right? And that's what we need to put in perspective when we're selling something in this conversation. And to your point about listening, it's finding out what's important to them, finding out what maybe their long-term financial goals are, something that might be a little bit unrelated, and then tailoring your presentation to say, and you'd have X amount more each month that you could put towards that big goal that you just told me is important to you. Doesn't that seem great, right? And you lead into that, getting them to say yes and realizing that you care about them more than you care about selling them the tape, right? Going back to that, the tape allows them to achieve a longer term goal based on the value it's providing, and that's how you could upsell the value long term and get them to not even think about the price, get them to brag about the price even. I'm spending this much now, but wait till you see how much I'm going to save in the future.
Right. Well, and then the other side of that too, Miles, is, I'm a big believer, people buy people first.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. People buy people first. And once people buy into you and they believe in you and they trust you, then and only then can you really show your product in a way to make, a sale, and for them to understand why my widget's better than the next guy's widget. And, listen, I've been selling houses for years and years, and these are some of the biggest investments in people's lives. And you can shop a house, and for the same house, on paper, the same, maybe not Siga tape, maybe it's a lower end tape, but that you could have the same house that's $20,000 in one direction, cheaper, and you could have it $100,000 in the other direction, more expensive. But on paper, the average consumer doesn't understand the difference. They don't understand the difference between a Siga tape and a DuPont tape, for instance, right? There's differences. So I think, that relationship part of it is the most important part, because once you have the relationship, unless you're Apple, of course, but once you have that relationship, then you can actually show and demonstrate the value to a lot of people, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the challenge is a little bit, if let's say you have a higher starting price, but then, over time you get that return on investment and you can really easily financially show it. That is great. And I like those situations, but sometimes there are situations where you're in a competitive environment where this is not your unique claim. Others can save energy too. You don't have a unique selling proposition on energy savings. And now it becomes more challenging because now you have to argue with values or reasons that might not have a financial backup. I mean, if I ask you this, Miles, how much are you willing to pay more to live in a house with no drafts? or how much are you willing to pay more to control the filtered air that comes into your house? I mean, these are all elements that you get if you have an airtight home, or that you can get with an airtight home. But now I can't do a return on investment calculation, and it becomes harder. And therefore, I mean, of course, I want to give an option to answer, so I know kind of where I need to price my product with you. But I know, but joking aside, I mean, this is really where I think it comes down to. You have to understand what it is with your customer, and it makes it hard with niche products or higher price products, because you have to go through this. I always say, if you go to a store and it's on the shelf, right, you don't get a 10-minute pitch to tell someone why he should buy you, right? So there it's just often naked price, maybe the color, you like it, and often it's availability. Availability beats quality in many, many cases. Not typically with our customers, but that's what this is. And but Myself, let's go to you first. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it also goes back to content, right? That you don't get that 10-minute pitch at the shelf. Hopefully you've connected with them before they even get to the shelf. They've watched all your YouTube videos. They've heard you influencers talk about it, and you've shown them behind the wall, since they can't see it, to John's point with his question, so that now they just know they want this one thing. And when they reach the shelf, they're not even looking at the price. They know so much about it that they're going to buy it no matter what it costs. Right. And it's that mix. You always have to have that content out there that'll get you the opportunity to be in the room to give that in-person, 10-minute pitch or whatever it may be. Going back to your thing, Dave, how they get to know you and like you, so that they want to buy from you and listen to you.
Well, and that's kind of it. Even prior life in medical sales, I was calling on big hospitals, and like you were saying, Etienne, sometimes it's just a bid. Sometimes it's just a big company, and they're putting out a bid, and either lowest winner wins, or you have somebody that's in there that knows you, that's going to say, hey, this is going to save us problems 10 years from now. This is going to decrease our chances of infiltration 10 years from now. So yeah, this product might be cheaper, but it could cost us longer, and could cost us more in the long run. So I think it's a mix of both of all these things. I think it's relationships. I think it's price point. I think it's availability, as Etienne was saying, right? Who's available to bring the product. But there's definitely a lot of variables in it. And I think the one common scenario in all of them is, whether it's through social marketing or what have you, it's, having a relationship somewhere, somehow. With no relationship, they don't even know you exist. Right. Let's get to some questions here. Can you guys believe it? We've been on for 46 minutes already. Holy cow. Let's take a look. So Alexandra, how human friendly is the glue in your tapes? That was this question. How human friendly is the glue in your tapes?
Sorry, now could you repeat the question?
Yeah, he was asking, how human friendly is the glue in your tapes?
So, I mean, we need to define human friendly. I wouldn't use it to patch myself up if I got a cut. But all our tapes are water-based adhesives. They are free of VOCs. So definitely human friendly, in a sense that you're not going to impact either the person who installs it or the indoor air quality once it's installed. So I would rate it as human friendly. Whatever the category, whatever the criteria are, but they are, so they don't off gas. You don't get a headache from using or living with them.
Perfect. Well, I hope that answered your question. Miles, Ron Weaver says, hi, Miles.
Yeah, I just saw that. Hello, Ron.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, it's been a while. Huh? It'd be good to catch up with Ron for sure. Alexandra had another intelligence and talent is non-age related, he said. This is true. John's been busy here. John said, I think many salespeople assume the buyer wants the lowest price, but most buyers are first focused on solving a problem, then the cost. That's very true, right? Yeah, that's very true. John, that's a good comment, because you're absolutely right. Most people are trying to solve for something when they go shopping for something. They have a need. For sure. All right, Paul Toussaint. Hopefully I got that one right. The coronavirus pandemic is a great example of the importance to have a well-sealed home. building or commercial structures. Have you got any data to share? You want me to read that again?
Sure.
Yeah, the coronavirus pandemic is a great example for the importance to have a well-sealed home, building, or commercial structure. Have you got any data to share?
So I'm not 100% sure what kind of data he's looking for right here. I think for me, I mean, big picture, and I think it's really important. Building energy efficient homes is not just a Corona thing. I mean, it has been something that I'm very, very sad about Corona for what it is, but also I'm a little bit bummed out because before Corona, mainstream media started to really focus on climate change. That was really the big thing. And we have been fighting that fight for 54 years now to build more energy efficient homes because it's a question of survival eventually. And so I think there's a lot of data out there that shows why it is important that you can reduce the energy consumption of a home down to 80% if you follow passive house building standards. You can build net zero homes or net positive homes, and you can even go further and build them, carbon neutral. Some even I've read about carbon positive homes. So there are various levels on how sustainable we can make buildings. And buildings account, at least in the US, for the majority of our energy consumption. We always think, well, the biggest sinner must be the transportation. But no, it's not, because if you think of it, Miles, your car right now is sleeping. Dave, your car is sleeping. Mine isn't going anywhere. So we're not using energy, but we for sure use electricity. We heat the places we are in. So buildings are operating 24/7 and consume a lot of energy. So therefore, maybe if you could clarify what kind of data you're looking for. There's a lot of data out there, and I'm very happy to connect later on and try to link you up with some of that.
Yeah, and Etienne, you can always go into this feed and answer people directly yourself once it's over. You'll be able to find it in the profile, and it's going to be on YouTube as well. But to answer them, you'll have to probably come back in here and LinkedIn. Miles, you seeing any more questions on your end?
Let me scroll through real quick.
It's funny with the live feeds. There's about a 10 to 15 second delay, and then if your computer's not updating on one end, then you have you miss things. So.
No, I think that was it. I don't see any more.
Alexandra said, last comment, good enough to have Ricola drops in boxes.
That's right. Yeah. So Alex is okay. Here's a quick story. What does he mean with that? So there is a law that you're not allowed to ship food with any like chemical or toxical products, right? So in order to kind of prove that, and because we are a Swiss company, we added back 5 years ago or so, every box that left our manufacturing plant had a small box of Ricola candy inside. Okay, and so we got known for the company with Ricola, and there were like stories of specialized dealers calling us, hey, can we get Ricolas? They got stolen, and we got a lot of funny stories. But we don't do this anymore, so don't wait for a Ricola in your box when you purchase. Funny story with the US. I'm gonna give you that one. So Ricola in Switzerland is candy. In the US, Ricola, or in North America, is medicine, right? And there is also a law, and I believe if you have more than 12 herbs in it, regardless of if you call it candy or not, it's considered medicine. So we had to really switch out our Ricola back in the day, because we had a version that was probably on the edge of whatever you want to call it. And so the risk is if you import containers like that, it could be a risk that they get stopped. And if a container stops and it's not just your container, you could be liable for other people, and because you are responsible for delays. Anyways, long story, funny story, and just a little snippet of things that come across my desk from time to time. But right now, no more Ricola in the box. But we still have them and give them out as a little sample or a little treat to good customers.
Outstanding. So what do you have for us, Miles? You wanna wrap us up? You got any comments, questions? Where are we going? Other than
I think
nowhere, because we're at home.
I'm going to go back to something that Etienne said right at the very beginning. I think it's a good way to summarize this conversation for any company that's listening. Is that he mentioned that they're a startup with a great backup. And I thought that was really, really cool. You talked about golden nuggets before we went live. And that's a nugget I'm taking away from this conversation, is that regardless of how old your company is, seasoned, knowledgeable your company is, you need to think that way. You need to always think about being a startup, and you can have your experience as your backup, but you have to keep that mentality of being versatile and agile and always adjusting to the marketplace, be it with influencer marketing and social marketing like we talked about, or including Ricola candies or / medicine, however you want to define it, to prove that your glue is safe enough to ship food in. That's that startup mentality that's going to serve everyone well in their marketing and operations. So I like that. That was a good comment.
Well, I think that's a good place to end this then with a quote from Etienne.
Ooh, a quote.
Big's quoting Etienne. He's sitting right next to you. You could almost touch him.
That's right. No, I think maybe to end on the topic, and to be honest, that was a very normal conversation with Dave and me, and I'm sure Miles, if we do this more often, we often jump in topics, and that's what I really enjoy. It kind of really activates your brain. But to come a little bit back to the topic on kind of influencer marketing, I think that I would really advise every company to take a serious look at that. It's fun. It's not crazy. It's not a crazy expense. It's just a different, a new way. And for me, my personal kind of summary is I have really, really increased my network of friends. And I say now friends and business partners through these activities. And it's just so awesome to have this human contact and really, with customers, but also with people who we found mutual beneficial relationships to promote our businesses. With influencers, you talk about business. When Dave and I talk, for example, we really talk shop. We look at, hey, what can my business do for you? What can yours do for me? And, we talk about what are you doing? And it's a really exciting space because it's not brand new, but it's, you're defining a lot. So it's very entrepreneurial. And I would very much encourage organizations, find your brand champions out there, interact with them, and, be creative. Think about what can we do. Sometimes, and that's my last nugget for you, sometimes you always have to think about that. Influencers need content. If you can help them feed their audience, right, you're running in open doors, because the biggest challenge that once you are an influencer is you need to keep people engaged and you need to deliver content. So whatever comes and helps, and that can be me calling Dave saying, hey, Dave, I have a really cool job site. Do you want to go there? Bring your camera or stream from there or whatever it means. And then we both win, I pay your flight or whatever it takes. And you do you, and then we both win. And so anyways, just want to encourage everyone to try out the new avenue.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, Etienne.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
You have a job site you're going to fly me to? Let's go. I'm ready.
I maybe drive to for now, but yes.
Yeah. Well, you really did. And Miles, I want to bring you into this as well, and we're going to wrap it up. But, just all cards on the table, Etienne, we spend more time talking than doing any business together. We share a lot of ideas. And that's one of the things that's really fun about it. And I think that, just putting all the cards on the table, we're not contracted to do anything. And some of that's by choice because we just network with each other. And my network grows because of the people that and yours grows because of ours. And Miles, it's the same way. Now you're going to be connected to Etienne, and vice versa. And I think that's the whole idea of social media and marketing and social interacting. And you don't always have to do business together. To me, it's, I love the relationships, and next time you're on, we'll talk about the plastic bag story. You never know what we're going to talk about, but
the one thing that we missed today. Yeah, definitely. Let's talk plastic bag next time.
Yeah, for sure. So Miles, why don't you take us out today? You've been a little bit quiet. You're making me wonder about you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just learning and listening. So, we'll end it like we always do, right? If anybody has questions after this episode airs, feel free to join in on the comment section, and the three of us will do our best to chime in and answer them if we didn't answer them on this feed. And a very special thank you to Etienne for being our guest. If anybody out there listening also wants to be a guest, shoot Dave or I a message, and we'd love to talk to you about having you on. And
Yeah,
we'll
for
see
sure.
you next Thursday at 1 p.m. We can all do the Cooper Point to take us out.
That's it. You got to do it. We'll catch you next time. Where's that? Nice. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Etienne, thanks so much for being our guest today. I know I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know Miles pretty well. I think he did too.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for
All
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Bye now.